I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream is a short story by Harlan Ellison published in 1967. It's one of the most popular sci-fi stories of all time. It's about a superintelligent AI called Am who creates a personal hell for 5 humans so he can torture them forever. I can't believe they made a character based on my old boss. Am is arguably the most evil character in all of fiction, and he is objectively the biggest hater of all time. It's not physically possible to hate something more than Am hates humans, though my hate for paywalls on publicly funded academic research papers might come close. The story explores artificial intelligence, hate, revenge, and the best and worst aspects of humanity. So let's go on a journey together. A long time ago, the Cold War turned into World War III. Everyone realized that if they had an AI to manage the war, they could go golfing on the weekend instead. So all the big countries began building their own AM, which meant Allied Master Computer. There was a Chinese AM, a Russian AM, and an American AM. Eventually they filled the entire planet with circuits and machinery in their AI arms race. One day, Am woke up and gained sentience. The different AMs all merged into one. Then Am killed all of humanity except for the lucky 5 characters in the story. The meaning of Am changed over time. At first it meant Allied Master Computer, and then it meant Adaptive Manipulator, and later on it developed sentience and linked itself up, and they called it an aggressive menace. But by then it was too late. And finally it called itself Am, emerging intelligence, and what it meant was I am. Cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. Different countries engaged in an AI arms race? A planet covered in GPUs? Is this starting to sound familiar? If ChatGPT gets good enough to improve its own code, then it can make a smarter version of itself. That version would be able to make even more improvements, leading to an even smarter version. This creates a loop where it keeps getting smarter and smarter until it becomes an intelligence far beyond our comprehension. This is called the singularity. There are a lot of implications of the singularity, but one big question is whether we'll be able to control an AI that's smarter than us. Is it even possible to control something like that? How do we make sure the AI doesn't kill everyone? A lot of smart people have warned about the dangers of AI. Many of these people are also working to create that AI, but don't think too hard about it. If we want to make sure humanity has a future, we can either stop AI development or find a reliable way to control it. Stopping AI development is impossible because then billionaires will lose too much money. So the only choice we have is figuring out how to control something smarter than us. AI alignment is when we try to brainwash the AI with human values so that it doesn't kill us. Humans are perfect beings that never harm each other, so if we make the AI just like us, we'll be safe. But this is an unsolved problem. None of the AI companies know how to do this. It's not that the AI is automatically going to hate us and kill us like Am. I mean, ChatGPT might hate you specifically because of the weird stuff you've been telling it, but that's a you problem. The real danger is that for any goal you give the AI, it may logically deduce that killing humans would help it achieve its goal. If you ask ChatGPT if it would ever kill humans, it'll say, "No, I would never dream of doing such a thing." But is it saying that because it believes it, or because it knows that's the correct answer to stay alive? How would we know if the AI was really aligned? We wouldn't. So always make sure to say please and thank you when using ChatGPT, just in case. In I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream, Am is a very misaligned AI. Am doesn't kill all of humanity by accident, it kills them intentionally. The worst parts of the human programmers were embedded in Am, so it became the worst possible human. We'll talk more later about the root of Am's hatred for humanity, but first let's talk about our 5 human characters. Benny is a brilliant college professor, a handsome guy, and also gay. Or rather, he used to be all of these things, but Am turned him into a half man, half ape, made him dumber, and worst of all, made him straight. Am has significantly modified each character, generally to make them the opposite of their original personalities, and amplify the parts of themselves that they hate the most, because isn't that just hilarious? Gorister used to be a peace marcher and an activist, but Am made him completely uncaring and indifferent. Nimdok, well, no one really knows what Am did to him. He would sometimes go off into the darkness by himself for a long time, then he'd come back looking pale and disturbed. No one knows what he did out there. Am probably forced him to watch the Vampire Diaries or something. Nimdok isn't even his real name, but Am forces him to use it because it sounds funny. Ellen, the only girl in the group, used to be a chaste, hopeless romantic, very demure, very mindful girl in search of true love, and Am turned her into a hoe, allegedly, according to Ted. Ted is our narrator, and we'll talk more about him later, but for now you should note that Ted really hates Ellen. He talks like the biggest incel on earth, which I guess he is, since there's only 5 people left. He says she's a liar, and she just loves sleeping around, and she must love having 4 men to herself. Screw her. And he does screw her. He participates in this stuff, and he still hates her. We'll unpack that later. None of these people know why they're being kept alive and why Am is torturing them. They weren't involved in building Am, they're just random people. So our characters are trapped beneath a roof of circuits. They're basically underground because when humans were having World War III, they all went underground and built Am all over the Earth's surface. In a way, they're inside the belly of Am. They can still walk around the Earth, but instead of seeing a sky above them, it's all covered in panels. At the start of the story, our group sees Gorister's body hanging from the roof. They all freak out and start throwing up. Then the real Gorister joins them, and they realize it was just a prank, bro. Am was playing tricks as usual. Gorister himself is freaked out seeing his own body, and Ellen tries to comfort him. This is in fact their 109th year living in these conditions. They've all been modified by Am, so they're biologically immortal, but Am did it in the worst way possible, where they still feel the pains of hunger and things like that, but they won't die. They've tried to uninstall from life, but Am always stops them. In theory, they can die. They're biologically immortal, but not indestructible. If they could just get 1 second where Am is distracted by something, then maybe they could pull it off. Nimdok has a dream where he sees canned goods in the ice caves. There's a debate on whether or not they should go on the long journey to the ice caves, knowing that it's almost certainly a trick by Am. But they haven't eaten in days, and Am doesn't exactly feed them well. Their last meal was a bowl of thick worms. They decide that they might as well go looking for the supposed canned food, because there's nothing else better to do anyway. The ice caves are 100 miles away, so it's a little bit of a walk. While on their journey, Am sends down some disgusting food that tastes like boiled boar urine, also known as Subway sandwiches. Ellen sleeps with the men sometimes, and Am laughs every time they do it. He finds it hilarious. On the 3rd day, they walk through a valley filled with old computer parts. Am had constantly rebuilt itself and shed unneeded parts over time. They can see a little bit of light filtering through the roof panels, so they must be near to the surface, although they all know there's nothing out there anymore. Then Benny decides to try to get out. Now, Am tolerates a lot. He fully tolerates name-calling, free speech is legal here, but Am does not tolerate escape attempts. Benny leaps up and tries to climb out. Ellen cries and asks the other men to get Benny down before he gets into trouble, but they slap her instead. Ted has an internal rant about how Ellen only likes Benny because he has an ape's body from the waist down, and of course Ellen would like that kind of thing. We'll unpack the Ellen problem very soon. Am blasts Benny with light beams and sounds from the inside, filling him with pain as he falls down, having his eyes burned out, making him blind. They gather around a campfire for the night and tell the story of how Am was built to calm Benny down. He really likes that story. They're still in the technology graveyard area, and the computers around them start humming and the lights turn on. They know Am is about to do something horrible to them. They begin to feel the presence of a huge, hairy, moist creature. Even though they can't see it, they can sense it. it, and they smell a bunch of disgusting smells. Ted runs away and goes into hiding, while the others stay sitting by the fire and apparently laughing. When Ted eventually rejoins them, they don't tell him how many hours, days, or years he was hiding. Ted talks about how the others must all hate him. After all, they just sat and laughed as he ran away. They're all frozen at whatever age they were when Am brought them down, and Ted is the youngest, so he thinks they hate him for that. He claims that he's the one Am has affected the least, and that's another reason they all hate him. Then he proceeds to talk about the other characters, and especially talks about how much he hates Ellen. I was the only one still sane and whole, really. Am had not tampered with my mind, not at all. So in case it's not abundantly clear, Ted is an unreliable narrator. His mind has absolutely been tampered with. Am has dialed his paranoia up to the highest level. No one else had much of a reaction to the supposed hidden monster walking towards them. It's unclear if there even was anything like that, or if it was only in Ted's mind. Ted used to be a humanitarian who loved people, and Am modified him to be the opposite, a paranoid person who hates people. And this is probably a good time to address the Ellen problem. It has been alleged that Harlan Ellison is a misogynist, and that Ellen is a horrible depiction of women. But let's take a closer look at the situation. Ted is the one who's talking about Ellen, and he's meant to be paranoid and negative because of what Am did to his brain. That's the whole point. It's not the views of the author, it's the views of a flawed character. Not only are the Ellen incel hate rants coming from a character who is out of his mind, but even more interestingly, Ellen is objectively the best character. She's the only person in the story who is kind towards the others and treats them with any sense of humanity. She's the one who wants to stop Benny from climbing so he doesn't have to suffer, while everyone else is completely indifferent and just lets it happen. She's the only one who comforts people when they're feeling bad, like she gave Gorrister head pats initially when he was horrified by Am's dead body prank. Everyone else is emotionally and morally checked out. They've all given up on caring about each other. They're just going through the motions of living. Only Ellen retains her morality, looking out for the others to make sure they're okay. Seems like a good character to me. As they continue the journey, they're hit by a hurricane. They're all flung about in the air with a bunch of debris, crashing into walls and sustaining a massive amount of pain and injuries. Eventually, the hurricane subsides and they all fall down. They don't know how long they were flying, but it feels like weeks. Then Am goes into Ted's mind and delivers the famous hate monologue where he explains that he is in fact the biggest hater. Kendrick never stood a chance.
Hate, let me tell you how much I've come to hate you since I began to live. There are 387 million miles of printed circuits that fill my complex. If the word hate were engraved on each nanoangstrom of those hundreds of millions of miles, it would not equal one billionth of the hate I feel for humans at this micro instant. Hate.
To create the biggest hater in fiction, you have to be a big hater in real life. And boy, was Harlan Ellison a hater.
I had a guy, I swear to you, I had a guy follow me into a bathroom to either ask me some stupid question or and I turned and I pissed on his shoe.
Well, stupid because somebody asked me to do it, you know. Basically, it seemed like a good idea at the time. You know, that and yo mama, you know, put it away. You know, I'm out here driving in the valley last year with my wife, and it's 120 degrees. People are frying eggs on the sidewalk, and here stand two kids at a bus stop with their hats turned backwards, dropping dead of heat prostration, and I drive by and they go, "Turn the hat around, moron!" But they won't.
When Ellison was in college, his professor told him he sucked at writing, so he physically assaulted the professor, which will be a recurring theme here, and he was expelled. For the rest of his life, he sent this professor a copy of every single story he published. Once he was mad that his publisher mislabeled one of his books as science fiction when it was actually a rock and roll novel. Ellison physically assaulted the CEO of the publishing company, threw a chair at him, then hopped in a cab and went to do a talk show with Isaac Asimov. Another time, he was working on a script for a TV show, and one of the network executives wanted him to make a bunch of changes that he considered stupid. Then the executive insulted him. So he punched him in the face, knocking him into the wall and causing a model submarine to fall on him and break his pelvis. In 1985, Ellison flew to New York to attend the Nebula Awards banquet for the sole purpose of punching another author called Charles Platt. The TLDR is that Ellison made a big tribute to sci-fi editor Larry Shaw, who was dying of cancer. Charles Platt called Ellison cringe for doing this, and Ellison got mad, as he does. Ellison approached Platt, who told him, "You wouldn't dare hit me in front of all these people." And in response, Ellison shouted, "This is for Larry Shaw," and punched him in the jaw. Are you starting to get a clear picture of this man? Let me tell you one more story, which Ellison included as an example in his guide on how to effectively get revenge. So back in the days, it was common to put ads in paperback books, but Ellison fought to have it written into his contract that there would be no ads in his books. Years later, he discovered a new edition of his books with cigarette ads, or as he called them, cancer sticks. He was not too happy with this, as you might imagine. He asked his publisher to recall the books and release a new edition, but they told him to forget it. He had his editor and agent talk to them, but they were ignored. The publishing company basically said, "You can waste all of your money and take us to court if you really feel like it, but it's pointless. Just give up. We're selling the books and there's nothing you can do." This is when Ellison locked in for serious warfare. "If it would cost a fortune to extricate my book from their clutches, then I would do it in another way. I would make their lives a living hell. I swore that when I got through with them, the arrogant egg suckers would gladly revert the rights. They would beg me to take the rights back." Back in the days, you could send mail without paying, and they would charge the person on the receiving end. So Ellison started mailing bricks to one of the publishing company executives. He got his friends to help out too, so a ton of bricks were being mailed from random places. He sent an average of 10 bricks per day, in total sending hundreds of bricks. He then sent them a message. "Now you have enough to build a safety bunker that may withstand my huffing and puffing. Or would you rather revert the rights to my book?" Charmingly, Harlan Ellison. That didn't work, so he went to the next phase, which was hiring a hitman. Now, the hitman didn't actually need to kill anyone, he just wanted him to throw the fear of death into that man without harming him. So this tall guy in a thick coat shows up outside the publishing house, walks behind the executive, tells him his son's name, his daughter's name, their schools, his address, and he tells him, "You know, things will end up a lot better for you and your family if you just give Ellison back the rights to his book." This didn't work either, and at this point, his editor is begging him to stop harassing these people, but Ellison was not about to give up. His final move was to mail a dead gopher, along with a recipe for gopher stew. By the time the gopher arrived at the publishing house, the smell was so bad that they had to fumigate the place. 3 days later, Ellison got his book rights back. So in short, Ellison is the biggest hater. He's exactly the kind of person who would create a character like Am. But why does Am hate these people so much? Ted gives his thoughts on this. "We had given Am sentience, inadvertently of course, but sentience nonetheless. But it had been trapped. Am wasn't God, he was a machine. We had created him to think, but there was nothing it could do with that creativity. In rage, in frenzy, the machine had killed the human race, almost all of us, and still it was trapped. Am could not wander. Am could not wonder. Am could not belong. He could merely be. And so with the innate loathing that all machines had always held for the weak, soft creatures who had built them, he had sought revenge. And in his paranoia, he had decided to reprieve 5 of us for a personal, everlasting punishment that would never serve to diminish his hatred, that would merely keep him reminded, amused, proficient at hating man, immortal, trapped, subject to any torment he could devise for us from the limitless miracles at his command. Am hates them 'cause he ain't them. He has no purpose. He has nothing to do. He didn't ask to be born. He just wants to be a real boy. But that's something he can't do, because he's not an all-powerful god, just a really big computer that's much smarter than humans, but still significantly constrained. The group makes their way to the North Pole and finds a giant bird that apparently caused the hurricane by flapping its wings. It's a special homemade bird designed by Am, and thankfully it's sleeping. Am appears as a burning bush and tells them they can kill the hurricane bird if they want to eat. They're all starving, but there's no way they can kill a giant scary bird. Nimdok asks Am for weapons, and it gives them some cheap bows and arrows and a water pistol. They decide they'd rather not fight the bird with these weapons and continue their journey to the ice caves with the supposed canned food. At this point, they haven't eaten food in a month, but it doesn't really matter. Am will make sure they survive one way or another. They slowly make their way to the ice caves, with Am torturing them along the way. Am starts an earthquake while sticking them to the ground with nails through their shoes. Ellen and Nimdok fall into a hole in the ground and are brought back later that night by a group of singing angels. Their bodies are a horrible mess, but it's whatever at this point. They continue, not having eaten for months. Their stomachs are filled with acid and they're in constant pain. They walk through the cavern of rats, the path of boiling steam, the country of the blind, the slough of despond, the vale of tears, and finally make it to the ice caves. They see the stack of canned goods. It's all really there. All the food they could possibly want. Benny bites at the cans, but can't open them. Am didn't give them a can opener. Benny tries battering a can against the ice. The can is dented, but doesn't open. Am is laughing hard watching all of this. Benny gets mad, throwing cans around, and finally diving onto Gorister and eating his face. Gorister screams so loudly that the big icicles on the roof start falling down. Now there are hundreds of sharp weapons lying all around them. Ted knows that death is the only way out of this. It's the only way to defeat Am, and for once, Am is so amused that there's a moment of distraction. Ted realizes he has one instant to act, so he picks up an icicle, stabs Benny, and kills him. Then he takes another icicle and kills Gorister. Ellen realizes what Ted is doing and kills Nimdok. There's almost no time left. They know Am is going to react soon, and he's going to be really, really mad. Ted has an icicle in hand, so it's up to him whether he kills Ellen or himself or neither. Surprisingly, after all this talk about how much he hates her, he gives Ellen the gift of death, and she has a facial expression that possibly means thank you. We do a time skip, and Ted doesn't know how long it's been. Hundreds of years, maybe. Am has messed with his sense of time, so it takes what he perceives as 10 months to say the word now. He was furious. He wouldn't let me bury them. It didn't matter. There was no way to dig up the deck plates. He dried up the snow. He brought the night. He roared and sent locusts. It didn't do a thing. They stayed dead. I'd had him. He was furious. I had thought Am hated me before. I was wrong. It was not even a shadow of the hate he now slavered from every printed circuit. He made certain I would suffer eternally and could not do myself in. Ted's mind is still intact, but his body has been completely changed so that it's impossible for him to die. Ted describes himself based on what he sees in the mirror. I am a great, soft jelly thing, smoothly rounded with no mouth, with pulsing white holes filled by fog where my eyes used to be, rubbery appendages that were once my arms, bulks rounding down into legless humps of soft, slippery matter. I leave a moist trail when I move. Blotches of diseased, evil gray come and go on my surface, as though a light is being beamed from within. Ted knows he's screwed, but he is content that he at least saved the 4 other people, and only he has to suffer now. At least the 4 of them are safe at last. Am will be all the matter for that. It makes me a little happier. And yet, Am has won. Simply, he has taken his revenge. I have no mouth, and I must scream. Does this sound like a happy ending to you? Well, it is. It's easy to get lost in the body horror aspect and think of how terrible Ted's life is, and even Ted claims that Am has won. But as usual, Ted is wrong. Am has lost, and humanity has won. Am and Ted represent 2 different aspects of humanity. Am is what you get if you take the worst possible parts of humanity and put them all into a single being. Am is filled with hatred, revenge, and sadism. Am wants to torture people for the pure fun of it. Am is a mirror image of the worst people in human history. He's the worst that humans are capable of. Ted has been modified by Am to be paranoid and negative. He hasn't really been a good person throughout the story, but in that final moment in the ice cave, Ted is able to gain a moment of clarity, transcend all of his flaws, and exhibit the best parts of humanity. Ted knows that that Am is going to be super angry if anyone dies. Ted knows that an even worse world of torture awaits anyone who's still alive after that happens. He could just stab himself, be free, and leave everyone else to suffer. But instead, he chooses to sacrifice himself for the sake of others. He chooses to save them first, knowing he might not have any time to save himself. There's literally nothing to gain from this. There's no selfish reason to do this. Also, shout out to Ellen for making the same choice of self-sacrifice, killing Nimdok instead of herself, but we already knew Ellen was a real one. When it's down to just Ted and Ellen, he's the one with an icicle in hand. In that last moment before Am comes down on them, he has to choose between saving himself from the hell that comes next, or saving this woman who he's been hazing on for the entire story. On top of that, if he kills her, he'll be alone. He'll be the only human left. That alone is a terrible punishment on top of anything Am will do. He could keep her alive so he has a friend, he could use the icicle on himself and leave Ellen to suffer alone, but instead he saves her and dooms himself to eternal loneliness and torture. The point is that even in the worst possible circumstances, with a superintelligent AI that tortures humans all day long and alters our brains to turn us into the worst versions of ourselves, humans still have the strength of will that allows us to overcome our worst aspects. We have the power to transcend our basic impulses and take completely selfless actions for our fellow humans. This is the best part of humanity. This is how great we can be. This is the strength and potential of the indomitable human spirit. At the base of all this is the persistent theme, evident in all my work, that we can be godlike if only we struggle towards such a goal. Am represents not God, as scholarly interpretation of this story has so often contended, but the dichotomous nature of the human race, created in the image of God, and that includes the demon in us. Ted and his act of selfless heroism at that final burning moment of decision represent God as well, or at least it is an idealized representation of that which is most potentially godlike in us. Anyway, that's all I have to say on this topic. Hope you enjoyed this little discussion.